Hello student, so coming to chapter number 2, that is sexual reproduction in flowering plant. In this video class we will discuss about the types of pollination and its pollinating agent. Okay, but before we start the main topic, that is pollination, let us discuss two terms related to flower. First one is seismogamy and second one is clistogamy, and we will discuss it one by one. Okay, so first come to seismogamy. Actually, it is a condition of the flower in which the sex organ, that is stamen and carpel, are well exposed. That is, the flower are open. And those flower which show such condition are known as seismogamous flower. On the other side, if the sex organ are not exposed, that is, if the flower is not open, then the condition is known as clistogamy. Okay, and those flower which show such condition are known as clistogamous flower. That is, the flower can be either seismogamous, that is open, or it can be clistogamous, that is closed. So this is about the types of flower. Now coming to the main topic, that is pollination. We already know that pollination, it is the process of transferring a pollen grain from the anther to the stigma of a flower. And we also know that it is of two types. One is self-pollination and one is cross-pollination. And if I say self-pollination, it means that the pollen grain will be transferred to the stigma of same flower or another flower of the same plant. Whereas if I say cross-pollination, here the pollen grain will be transferred to the stigma of another flower of different plant. Okay, but here in this lesson we will discuss pollination in different way. So to understand this type of pollination, you just look at the figure given at the corner. So coming to the figure number A, you'll find that here the pollen grain is transferred from the anther to the stigma of same flower. That is, this type of pollination is known as autogamy. That is, autogamy, it is a type of self-pollination in which the pollen grain are transferred from the anther of a flower to the stigma of same flower. Okay, and coming to clistogamous flower, in clistogamous flower, as the flower is closed, there is no chances of cross pollen landing. So definitely such flower will perform only autogamy. That is, clistogamous flower are always autogamous. On the other side, those plants which produce clistogamous flower can also produce what? Assured seed set, because in such plant, as the flower is not open, only autogamy will be performed. So because of that, they can produce what? Assured seed set. And another important point, when you come to seismogamous flower, in seismogamous flower, the flower will be open. So there is high chances of cross pollen landing, and the chances of this autogamy will be very low. But in such flower, still autogamy can be performed. So if a open flower is to perform autogamy, then such flower should possess some important features, like the maturity timing of anther and stigma should be same, and this anther and stigma should lie close to each other so that the pollen grain can be easily land on the stigma. So if a particular flower possesses such character, that is, if the maturity timing of anther and stigma are same, and if anther and stigma lie close to each other, then such open flower can perform autogamy. So this is about autogamy. Now coming to figure number B. In figure number B, you will find that the pollen grain is transferred from the anther of a flower to the stigma of another flower, but belonging to the same plant or genetically similar plant. Then such type of pollination will be known as geitonogamy. That is, geitonogamy is a type of self-pollination in which the pollen grain will be transferred from one flower to the stigma of another flower belonging to same or genetically similar plant. Okay, and when you compare this autogamy and geitonogamy, you'll find that both of them are a type of self-pollination, and the difference is that in case of autogamy, the pollen grain will land on the stigma of the same plant, whereas in case of geitonogamy, the pollen grain will land from one flower to another flower belonging to the same plant. So when you compare this autogamy and geitonogamy genetically, both of them are similar, because the pollen grain come from the same plant. Even though the pollen grain land on same flower or different flower, the pollen grain will come from same plant. That's why heterogamy is considered to be similar to autogamy. Now come to last one, that is figure number C. In figure number C, what happened? The pollen grain will be transferred from the anther of a flower to the stigma of another flower of different plant. Then such type of pollination will be known as cross pollination. So another term for cross pollination is xenogamy. So these are three types of pollination. And in case of autogamy, pollinating. Next come to agent pollination. So in this lesson we will discuss about three pollinating agents, that is wind, water and insect. And here we know that wind and water, they are non-living component, so they represent abiotic agent. On the other side, as insects are living, they represent biotic agent. That is, agent of pollination will be of two types, abiotic and biotic. And of these two, biotic agent is more common, and among abiotic, water is more common. Okay. And when you come to this wind and water pollination, we know that the pollen grain will be carried in the direction of wind and water. So definitely the pollen grain coming in contact with the stigma will be a chance factor. So during transport, what happen? Lot of pollen grain will be lost. Okay. So to compensate such loss, this wind and water pollinated flower will produce a large number of pollen grain as compared to the number of ovule. Okay. So this is one of the most important character of wind and water pollinated flower. Okay. Now coming to our main point, here we will study the important character of flower which is pollinated either by wind, water or insect one by one. Okay. So first come to insect pollinated flower. So in case of insect pollinated flower, the first important thing is to attract the insect. So to attract the insect, definitely the flower are usually colorful. The flower are large. And if the flower are small, then they will group together to form an inflorescence so that the insect can be easily attracted. Okay. There should be rich in nectar, and they also produce what? Distinct smell which may be pleasant or unpleasant. In addition to this, the pollen grain and stigma are also sticky. So these are some of the important features of flower which is pollinated by insect. Now coming to insect, listen carefully, as this insect perform an important function for the flower, that is pollination. Because without pollination there will be no fertilization. If there is no fertilization, then there will be no formation of seed, then there will be no future plant. Okay. So to produce seed, what is required? Fertilization is required, and for fertilization, what is required? Pollination is required. So here this insect perform an important function for the flowering plant. That means the pollinated this insect, the insect pollinator should be rewarded. So question is, what kind of reward will be provided by the flower to the pollinating agent, that is insect? So here this pollen grain which contain nutrient and nectar, they are considered to be the floral reward provided by the flowering plant to the pollinating agent. Okay. Not only that, in some species also, what happen? The flower will provide a safe place to lay their eggs. Okay. So this can also be considered as a kind of floral reward provided by the flowering plant to the pollinating agent. So this is something about insect pollinated flower. Now next come to wind pollinated flower. As in case of wind pollinated flower, here no need to attract insect. So first of all, the flower can be colorless, the flower can be nectarless, the flower can be odorless. Okay, as there is no need to attract the insect. But coming to the main character of the flower pollinated by wind, here the pollen grain should be light, because the pollen grain is going to be transported by the wind current. On the other side, the stigma is going to trap that pollen grain which is carried by the wind current. So this this stigma should be hairy or feathery. Okay, and they should possess well exposed stamen. In addition to this, the anther are usually versatile. That means the filament are usually attached to the center of the anther so that the anther can move and swing freely. Okay, so these are the important features of wind pollinated flower, and it is commonly found in grasses. Now Coming to last point, there is water pollinated flower. Water pollinated flower. Okay, here this water pollination will take place in only in aquatic plant. But which aquatic plant? Only in submerged aquatic plant, where the plant is found under the surface of the water, like Bellisneria, Hydrilla, Zostera. This water pollination does not take place in aquatic plant like lotus, where the flower are exposed above the surface of water. Okay, and here also no need to attract the insect, so the flower can be colorless, the flower can be small, they can be nectarless, and they can be odorless. Okay, but some important features of flower pollinated by water are the pollen grain are usually light and they are unwettable because the pollen grain will be covered by a mucilaginous covering. Like that, the stigma is also long, sticky, and they are also unwettable. So these are the character of different flower pollinated by different pollinating agent. Okay, like this, we have come to the end of this class, and before we wind up, let me remind you of what we have learned in this class. Okay, so in this class, we have learned about the three types of pollination. There is autogamy, heterogamy, and xenogamy. And we have discussed about types of pollinating agent and about the character of flower pollinated by different pollinating agent. Okay. And that brings me to the end of this class. And thank you very much for your attention.